G'day everybody, today we are looking at how to implement some sort of attribute driven symbology in Google MyMaps. Now the unfortunate thing about Google's MyMaps is that the symbology cannot be changed and adjusted based on a particular attribute that your spatial file has. Though if you use my method, what you can eventually get is something a little bit like this. So you can see in this situation I've got waterfalls, and I've used a particular attribute in this situation, waterfall score, in order to adjust the size of the symbology here. So this is effectively attribute-driven symbology. That's what I've gotten to. The unfortunate thing though is there is no magic solution in order to get this, and unfortunately going to have to do a little bit of manual work beforehand to get an outcome a little bit like this. So I'm going to jump into that right now. So the main thing that we're using in order to make this happen is a program called QGIS. So let's say that the spatial data, let's just say you brought this into QGIS and you've got it as a geo package. That's what I have in this situation here. I've got my drops, my waterfalls here as a geo package layer. And then what we're going to do is use something called Model Designer, which is a way of effectively what's happening here in Model Designer is the original spatial file gets split out into all of the into several classes for later symbology. And the reason you want to use Model Designer, which by the way is in Processing Graphical Modeler, I think. Graphical Modeler, did that bring it up? Yeah, this is it. And the reason we're using this is so that it's repeatable. That is, if you at a later stage decide that you want to make some changes to the original file, you can then just run this Model Designer thing again and output all of the classes for your symbology again. So in this particular situation, what I've done is I've split out my original file into 9 different classes, which correspond to 9 different symbols in the symbology. And if we just quickly flick back to the Google My Maps, what you can see is the different sizes in waterfalls. There are 9 different sizes of the image of the icon that we have. And so that's what we're doing here in the Model Designer, is that we have 9 different classes that are based on the particular attribute, which was the waterfall, the size of the waterfall, the score of the waterfall, and we've got it then split it out into 9 different files at the end. So basically, if you want to do this, what you'll need to do is use Model Designer, the graphical modeler, to first bring in your file as an input, and then afterwards you'll need the tool to execute SQL. And in execute SQL, this is where you'll be doing the definitions of what the individual classes will be in your symbology. And so so for me, this was input of total drops. The SQL query was select whatever from input 1, that's the first input, where, and this is where you're going to define each particular class of what your symbology is going to be. So I said in this particular instance that for what is it, the middle class, so that's the 5th class in the symbology, I said that that would be for waterfall score, which is greater than 32, so 33 in this instance, from 33 all the way through to less than or equal to 40, so all the way through to 40. So that was the range that I decided upon for that particular class. And if you go into the other split outs here of the original file, you'll see, okay, we've got waterfall score between 25 and 32, and I've got all the ranges, in my case, between 10 all the way through to 101, and it splits it out into 9 different files based on that particular attribute, which we mentioned earlier was waterfall score. So splitting it out, the original file, into 9 different files based on the waterfall score. Those are my 9 classes. And so once you run that, it'll then ask you, okay, first of all, what is your input going to be, and then where your output's going to be. So in this case, I've got 9 different outputs, and I specify what those are, and you can see they are output there as a KML file, which is what Google Maps likes. So that's great. Once you run this, you get 9 different KML files, and you can go ahead and chuck those into Google My Maps. Now the next part of this is creating the symbology itself, because in this case, if you've got 9 different symbology classes and 9 different waterfall sizes, you're going to need 9 different images to represent those that symbology. So in my case, what I've done is I've used a program called GIMP to manually resize this picture of a waterfall into 9 different sizes. So I've got 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Those are the 9 those correspond to the 9 symbology classes that I'm going to have in the Google My Maps. So now let's jump over to Google My Maps. Now this here is the output for the person viewing it, but for the editing section, for the editing part, this is what it looks like. It's a little bit different. And so anyway, once you've got your KML files and you've got your images, PNGs are preferable because you notice that the background of the waterfall is transparent. Google My Maps understands transparency, which is great. It's best to have PNGs so you can have transparency in the background. What you're going to do is hit Add Layer. And I'm just going to cancel this because I've already got all the layers here that I want. You're going to add layer and import that, and you import the KML file, and you're going to have to manually import all the different KML files. Once you've done that, you're going to change the style to uniform, and then all items, you're going to go to more icons, and when you're in more icons, that's when you can choose a custom icon and add as many icons as you want, whichever icons you want. So you can see here I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I've got my 9 Symbology waterfall classes there, which is great. And so once you've set that up for all your different classes, so you're going to need to go through every single one of them and create all the symbology for it, that's when you should have your output, which is this. We've got waterfalls of several different sizes. The symbology is several different sizes, which correspond to, as we know from our model designer, correspond to several different ranges of the waterfall score value. So that's pretty much it. That's what you get out of this, and as I mentioned before, this is what the output looks like for someone who is viewing this. One thing to note is that when you click on the waterfall, you notice it brings up this little pop-up box, whereas for someone viewing the map, an external viewer, it's going to look a little bit different. The symbol, all the information, the attributes for the particular point or whatever it is you're uploading will appear on the left-hand side rather than a pop-up in the map itself. So that's pretty much it. One thing I will mention is that I just noticed that maybe my waterfall symbol that I've chosen isn't ideal, because when you're on Google Satellite, most things are green, or at least, where I'm looking at, most things are green, and so having a green symbol in front of a green background isn't ideal. So I might go and change it to something like purple, magenta, to try and make it stand out as much as possible. But anyway, have a think about your symbology. I also noticed that maybe I want to make the smallest waterfall size a little bit smaller. I think I want a bigger difference between the small and the big waterfalls. So also have a think about that, how you want the sizing or the colouring of your symbology to be, and what it's going to look like once you bring it into the map. So anyway, that's pretty much it. If you have any questions about how to use QGIS or GIMP or Google My Maps or anything like that, please leave a comment down below. Either myself or hopefully someone else will be able to respond and give you a bit of a hand. And other than that, thanks for watching and good luck.